Good morning. Thank you for joining me today. Today we will be in Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 through 48. Continuing with the Sermon on the Mount. You have heard that it was said, "Do not commit adultery." But I say to you that whoever looks at a woman to desire her has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. It is better to lose one of your members than to have your whole body thrown into hell. If your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better to lose one of your members than to have your whole body go into hell. It was said, "Whoever divorces his wife must give her a legal document." But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except for immorality, makes her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Again, you have heard that it was said to an older generation, "Do not break an oath, but fulfill your vows to the Lord." But I say to you, do not take oaths at all, not by heaven, because it is the throne of God, not by earth, because it is his footstool, and not by Jerusalem, because it is the city of the great king. Do not take an oath by your head, because you are not able to make one hair white or black. Let your word be yes, yes, or no, no. More than this is from the evil one. You've heard that it was said, "An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth." But I say to you, do not resist the evildoer, but whoever strikes you on the right cheek, turn the other to him as well. And if someone wants to sue you and take your tunic, give him your coat also. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Give to the one who asks you, and do not reject the one who wants to borrow from you. You have heard that it was said, "Love your neighbor, and hate your enemy." But I say to you, love your enemy, and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be like your Father in heaven, since he causes the sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Even the tax collectors do the same, don't they? And if you only greet your brothers, what more do you do? Even the Gentiles do the same, don't they? So then, be perfect, as your heavenly Father is perfect. Those are heavy words. Be perfect. Because ultimately man falls short of being perfect in every single way possible. And ultimately, that's why we need a Savior. That's why imputed righteousness of Jesus Christ is so important, because the standard isn't lowered, but we can have the righteousness of Jesus Christ. Yeah, and apart from just the outward working of morality, you have here also a stricter set of laws being given. That is, it matters what the contents of your heart are. Like, not only if you murder a man, but also if you're angry with him. Not only if you commit adultery, but also if you look with lust on another person. Yeah. Yeah, you also have this, whoever divorces his wife must give her a legal document. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except for immorality, makes her commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. I think the background on this, essentially, is that with loose living, people wanted to have the the marriage commitment, the outward appearance of marriage without the marriage commitment. That is, they wanted to live as though they weren't married at all by jumping from one spouse to the next when one looked more attractive. That is, and do it all legally within the law. That is, meh, my current wife isn't too hot. I'm going to go marry this other one. And they were well within their rights of the law to do it. Because there were some who would just give out certificates of divorce willy-nilly. But that wasn't right. That wasn't a legitimate reason for divorce. Adultery in his heart. Since Jesus considers adultery in the heart a sin, we know what we think about and allow our heart to rest on is based on choice. Many believe they have no choice, and therefore no responsibility for what they think about. But this contradicts the clear teaching of Jesus here. We may not be able to control passing thoughts or feelings, but we certainly do decide where our heart and mind will rest. Imagination is a God-given gift, but if it is fed dirt by the eye, it will be dirty. All sin, not the least sexual sins, begin with the imagination. Therefore, what feeds the imagination is of maximum importance in the pursuit of kingdom righteousness. It is also important to distinguish between temptation to sin and sin itself. The look is supposed to be not casual but persistent, the desire not involuntary or momentary but cherished with longing. Jesus, though tempted in all ways, endured such temptations, but did not yield to such sin. He was able to see women as other than objects for his gratification. He was tempted in all points as we are, but desire was expelled by the mighty power of a pure love to which every woman was a daughter, a sister, or a betrothed, a sacred object of tender respect. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. Here, Jesus uses a figure of speech, and did not speak literally. Sadly, some have taken it so, and have mutilated themselves in mistaken efforts in the pursuit of holiness. For example, the famous early Christian named Origen castrated himself on the principle of this passage. The trouble with the literal interpretation is that it does not go far enough. Even if you did cut off your hand or gouge out your eye, you could still sin with your other hand or eye. When all those are gone, you can especially sin with your mind. Mutilation will not serve the purpose. It may prevent the outward act, but it will not extinguish desire. Yeah. It is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. Jesus simply stressed the point that one must be willing to sacrifice to be obedient. If part of our life is given over to sin, we must be convinced that it is more profitable for that part of our life to die rather than to condemn our whole life. This is the one thing many are unwilling to do, and this is why they remain trapped in sin or never come to Jesus. They never get beyond a vague wish to be better. The salvation of our souls is to be preferred before all things, be they ever so dear and precious to us, and that if men's ordinary discretion teaches them for their preservation of their bodies to cut off a particular member, which would necessarily endanger the whole body, it much more teaches them to part with anything which will prejudice the salvation of their souls. Yeah. And I think this is why you have things like Jesus saying, I didn't come to bring peace, but to bring a sword, to have a daughter against her mother-in-law type thing, and son against his father type thing. That is that you have these bonds that are especially precious within our lives, bonds with other people. and sometimes they can be a cause of sin. But we have to value Christ and his righteousness more. And so sometimes it ends up with breaking those bonds, or those bonds being broken for us if we end up valuing Christ more than those things. Yeah, and it can be difficult to give up things like bad friendships that lead you into sin, but ultimately it's better to pursue righteousness in God. It has been said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. In Jesus' day, many people interpreted the Mosaic permission for divorce as granting virtually any reason as grounds for divorce. Some rabbis taught this even extended to allowing a man to divorce his wife if she burnt his breakfast. Moses insisted upon a writing of divorcement, that angry passions might have time to cool, and that the separation, if it must come, might be performed with deliberation and legal formality. The requirement of writing was to a certain degree a check upon an evil habit, which was so ingrained in the people that to refuse it altogether would have been useless and would only have created another crime. Yet in Jesus' day, the permission of Deuteronomy 24:1 had become an instrument of cruelty against wives. The scribes busied themselves solely about getting the bill of separation into due legal form. They did nothing to restrain the unjust caprice of husbands. They rather opened a wider door to license. Causes her to commit adultery. An illegitimate divorce gives place to adultery because God doesn't recognize the divorce and sees a new relationship as bigamous. It is possible for a person to have a divorce that is recognized by the state but not by God. If that person goes on to marry someone else, God considers that relationship adultery because he sees them as still married. You have heard that it was said to those of old, "You shall not swear falsely." The scribes and Pharisees had twisted the law, "You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain," to permit taking virtually every other name in a false oath. Do not swear at all. Jesus reminds us that God is part of every oath anyway. If you swear by heaven, earth, Jerusalem, or even your head, you swear by God, and your oath must be honored. But let your yes be yes. Having to swear to make oaths betrays the weakness of your word. It demonstrates that there is not enough weight in your own character to confirm your words. How much better is it to let your yes be yes and your no be no? Some have taken this word of Jesus as more than an emphasis on truth-telling and honesty as an absolute prohibition of all oaths. This is misguided because oaths are permitted under certain circumstances as long as they are not abused and used as a cover for deception. God himself swears oaths. Jesus spoke under oath in a court. Paul made oaths. The truly good man will never need to take an oath. The truth of his sayings and the reality of his promises need no such guarantee. But the fact that oaths are sometimes necessary is the proof that men are not good men, and this is not a good world. You've heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. The Mosaic law did teach an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But over time, religious teachers moved this command out of its proper sphere, a principle limiting retribution for the civil government, and put it in the wrong sphere, as an obligation in personal relationships. But whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn the other to him also. Here, Jesus presents the fullness of the eye for an eye law, and how its idea of limiting revenge extends into the principle of accepting certain evils against oneself. When a person insults us, slaps you on the right cheek, we want to give them back what they gave to us, plus more. Jesus said we should patiently bear such insults and offenses, and not resist an evil person who insults us this way. Instead, we trust God to defend us. It is wrong to think Jesus means evil should never be resisted. Jesus demonstrated with his life that evil should and must be resisted, such as when he turned tables in the temple. Jesus is here saying that the true Christian has learned to resent no insult and to seek retaliation for no slight. When we think how Jesus himself was insulted and spoken against as a glutton, a drunk, an illegitimate child, a blasphemer, a madman, and so forth, we see how he lived this principle himself. It is wrong to think that Jesus means a physical attack cannot be resisted or defended against. When Jesus speaks of a slap on your right cheek, it was culturally understood as a deep insult, not a physical attack. Jesus does not mean that if someone hits across the right side of our head with a baseball bat, we should allow them to hit the left side. If a right-handed person strikes someone's right cheek, presumably it is a slap by the back of the hand, probably considered more insulting than a slap by the open palm. Whoever compels you to go 1 mile, go with him 2. Positively, we are told to take command of evil impositions by making a deliberate choice to give more than we are required. At that time, Judea was under Roman military occupation. Under military law, any Roman soldier might command a Jew to carry his soldier's pack for 1 mile, but only 1 mile. Jesus here says, go beyond the 1 mile required by law and give another mile out of a free choice of love. This is how we transform an attempt to manipulate us into a free act of love. Yeah, I bet that was not popular when Jesus said it. Yeah, love your enemies. Jesus reminds that in the sense God means it, all people are our neighbors, even our enemies. To truly fulfill this law, we must love, bless, do good, and pray for our enemies, not only our friends. Jesus understood we will have enemies, yet we are to respond to them in love, trusting that God will protect our cause and destroy our enemies in the best way possible by transforming them into our friends. Just as your Father in heaven is perfect. If a man could keep just what Jesus said here, he would truly have a righteousness greater than the scribes and the Pharisees, the very thing we must have to enter into God's kingdom. But there's only one man who has lived like this, Jesus Christ. What about the rest of us? Are we left out of the kingdom of God? We see that in this section, Jesus was not primarily seeking to show what God requires of the Christian in his daily life. True, Jesus has revealed God's ultimate standard, and we must take it to heart. But his primary intent was to say, if you want to be righteous by the law, you must keep the whole law, internal and external. That is, you must be perfect. What is our current relation to the law as truly interpreted? We are exposed as guilty sinners who can never make ourselves righteous by doing good works, which was exactly the view held by most people in Jesus' day and in our own day. Yeah. Carrying on. Psalm chapter 6, verses 1 through 10. Lord, do not rebuke me in your anger. Do not discipline me in your raging fury. Have mercy on me, Lord, for I am frail. Heal me, Lord, for my bones are shaking. I am absolutely terrified. And you, Lord, how long will this continue? Relent, Lord, rescue me. Deliver me because of your faithfulness, for no one remembers you in the realm of death. In Sheol, who gives you thanks? I am exhausted as I groan. All night long I drench my bed in tears. My tears saturate the cushion beneath me. My eyes grow dim from suffering. They grow weak because of all my enemies. Turn back from me, all you who behave wickedly, for the Lord has heard the sound of my weeping. The Lord has heard my appeal for mercy. The Lord has accepted my prayer. May all my enemies be humiliated and absolutely terrified. May they turn back and be suddenly humiliated. Yeah. And finally, Proverbs chapter 1, verses 30 through 33. For those who didn't listen to wisdom, they did not comply with my advice. They spurned all my rebuke. Therefore they will eat from the fruit of their way, and they will be stuffed full of their own counsel. For the waywardness of the simpletons will kill them, and the careless ease of fools will destroy them. But the one who listens to me will live in security, and will be at ease from the dread of harm. Yeah. They will eat from the fruit of their way, and they will be stuffed full of their own counsel. If we reject wisdom, necessarily what we encumber are the consequences of our actions. And those can be pretty bad. So, anyhow, thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you have a great day. Bye.